Good morning. My name is Shakir Al-Zaidi. I'm the Managing Director of Russell IPM in the UK. Russell IPM has been involved in the pheromone chemistry for the last 25 years, and we have been very much involved in the campaign against Tuta absoluta in the Mediterranean over the last 5 years. Just to put the issue in perspective, Tuta absoluta, when it arrived to the Mediterranean, it took everybody by surprise. The result was devastation across the countries before anybody can identify what the problem was. The issue also was very fast moving. It moved from Spain to Morocco to Libya and to Jordan eventually by 2010, causing a larger scale devastation wherever it goes. The movement was fast and dramatic across Europe, northern part of the Mediterranean and the south part of the Mediterranean, moving to the Middle East and beyond. Now, what is this speed? Why the transportation of the insect so fast? Well, the reason actually Tuta absoluta did not move from one country to the other by normal means. It moved mainly by human activity. In the Mediterranean, we produce tomato seedlings in large-scale nurseries and export them in different places. An infestation in one nursery will mean infestation in so many farms in so many regions and countries. Also, there is a larger scale trading of tomato across the area, and any infestation in the transported tomato means moving the problem from one country to the country without any passport or check. The use of common resources between farmers, mainly boxes to transfer tomatoes from the farm to the market, from the market to factories, and etc. All that helps to distribute the pest between the farms. And finally, the larger scale transportation between countries also helped dramatically. So effectively, we did it ourselves. But at the same time, we can't stop trading in these issues, but it means we need to control it much better. The result was a devastation across the area. Thousands and thousands of tons of tomatoes being destroyed, millions of dollars worth of crop devastated, and livelihood of farmers being affected beyond recognition. But where do you go from here? The reason for this review is basically to try to draw some lessons from which we could help drawing some strategy for the management of Tuta absoluta in Yemen. The main lessons we have from the Med area is one is nobody was ready for it. All organizations and rules and regulations were not sufficient to handle the problem. All actions being made by governments and organizations took place after the damage was done. The other thing which it meant a lot of quick actions being made, some of it not very well thought about. Effectively, many mistakes have been made. But it meant that these people learned how to deal with the issue, and for you there's no reason why you develop your own way. In other way, there's no right way. For every country there is a way being developed and tried and tested to deal with the conditions of that particular country. The other lesson, there is no one single magic solution which we're going to solve the problem overnight. Don't look for it, it's not there. We learned after a hard lesson is integrated pest management is the solution. We just need to integrate and incorporate all aspects of management in order to be able to contain this problem. The final point, which is very important, please don't think Tuta is a temporary visitor. Tuta is here to stay. You have the right crop, you have the right temperature, you have the right environment, so it's here to stay. So what I would like to say, please, when you think about anything, think strategic, think long term, because it is not going to go away. The element of the IPM strategy is very simple. It's straightforward, but it needs to be clearly thought out and clearly communicated and clearly placed. To manage Tuta absoluta properly, you need to put the farmer at the heart of any strategy. It has got the prevention element, whereby the hygiene, the destruction of infested crops or any old dead plant from previous season, any trimmings need to be destroyed completely, clean fields, clean premises, no hiding place for any potential infestation to be transferred from one year to the other. All that need to be incorporated and made into part of the educational system for the farmer. The second part of the strategy is detection. Tuta absoluta need to be monitored carefully so that an early intervention can be made. The earlier we intervene, the better chance we have to manage the problem. So the farmer need to use pheromone traps for early detection and then early intervention. Intervention, which is the third element, has to be selective and has to be very well thought out. It is not just throwing fire at the crop, it needs to be stage-wise as we're going to look at it at a later stage. But all these issues, it need to be under the control of the farmer for a simple reason. Under certain conditions, these insects can breed every 28 days. It means between the life stages, you're talking about days, few days. And before you know it, you have a second generation coming in and a third generation. So the farmer cannot wait for an external advisor to tell him to do or not to do. He needs to be able to make that decision himself. And he's got the resources at his fingertip so he could intervene whenever he feels is the right time to intervene. We need to empower the farmer through different ways. The first one is communication. Communication is key, and the method in which we communicate with the farmer is extremely important. We need to be transparent, honest, and in a way it can build a confidence between us and the farmer. He will then be able to believe in what we're saying, and not only that, we need to communicate with other stakeholders, the consumers, the traders, everybody. This is a national emergency, and everybody should put some part to be part of the solution. The second thing is the education. We need to engage the extension workers, the advisors, the students, anybody with any level of education. We need to train them to train the farmers and unleash a campaign of practical farm schools to show the farmers how to identify but also what to do. Finally, integration. We need to integrate not only the farmer but their organizations. Any organization which is active in the farming community need to be engaged in this process so that everybody will feel included and everybody has got a role to play in achieving a solution to this particular problem. National objectives. It's important before the outset is to identify what do you want to achieve. What are our objectives? These can be, from our experience in the last 5 years, this can be focused on mainly 3 elements. One is containing the economic damage. You will never ever gonna remove it 100%, but we have to cut it down to an acceptable economical level. We identify a reasonable objective level to work to and then try to improve it as we go along. Number 2, to prevent the development of resistance of insecticide. That is a broad objective, but it can be narrowed down through education, through cooperation, to ensure the use of a wide mix of insecticide into the program to prevent the focus on a limited number of insecticide and then resistance develops and we lose these insecticide, and in some cases it could be a very important insecticides. The final point, which is very important, is to prevent the increase in residue level in food chain, the insecticide residue. Uneducated use of insecticide, cheap insecticide, mixture of insecticide could lead to an increased level of insecticide residue in the food chain. So in other way, you might control the problem in the field, but you're causing another problem at the marketplace, at the food chain. So the objective of the campaign should take a balance between these 3 components and to try to deliver them to the best possible way. That is from one hand. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity for us now, because the farmers are so desperate to try anything to save their livelihood. It is a good opportunity for us to introduce to them the modern agricultural practices. And we have seen this in many, many countries. Now, in the last few years, method of agriculture, hygiene, prevention, and also thinking of the application and how the farmer operates his farm has changed since the problem of Tuta absoluta. So please seize the moment, use the opportunity to make a momentum or a momentum leap in the method in which farmers are apply agriculture, because they want to do that. They need to do that. Let's look at the first element of the strategy, containing the damage. The key element to this is early detection. The earlier, the better, whereby we could reduce the population to an acceptable level before the fruit starts. It means here we're going to need monitoring, which is here pheromone monitoring traps, But also we need inspection. We need to teach the farmer how to inspect his plants thoroughly, deeply, every day, to make sure there is no lingering population underneath which could explode anytime. Secondly, we need to understand the pest behavior and life cycle. We need to get away from the standards. Need to think about what is the insect is doing. The insect is flying, the insect is laying eggs, the insect is hatching their eggs and crawling over the leaf and moving inside the leaf, eating the leaf from the inside, and then placing the eggs on the tomatoes and then going into the tomato itself. And then on the other hand, you have these later stages of the insect to go into pupation, and from pupation to adulthood. We need to tackle all these stages in order to make a break. So think about which stage you want to tackle, and the next insecticide you use tackles the other stage. Chase the insect throughout the life stages, that way you can control it. If you stick to one mode of action or one life stage, then you will never do it. In conclusion, complacence and ignorance are the insect's best friend. People need to learn what's the problem and to be aware and to be always on the lookout. One thing about the detection and the early detections and the importance of it, it can be exemplified by this particular graph. This is basically monitoring of Tuta absoluta in an open field in south of Spain. At the same time, there is a record of temperature. If you look at the graph, which is the black, the thick black, that is the average of the population. And if you look at how that population level moves against the temperature measured in the field, it's almost identical. The peaks of the temperature and the troughs of the temperature profile and the pheromone capture in the traps are almost identical. What it means? It means that you might have an insect in your farm, but because the temperature is low, the capture is low. So you may think you don't have a problem. And within a day or two, there is a spike in the temperature, increase in the temperature, and suddenly all these insects start to become extra active. And you think you just had a problem. No, you still had it, but it just now becomes more active. And this change from inactive to active, it could happen within 1 or 2 days. And that's why it's very important to monitor and to monitor very carefully, and particularly when temperatures are shooting up. So the farmers need to check both temperature and pheromone traps to make sure they know what is going to hit them. This is basically a diagram to explain to you what we're talking about, the management mix. The management mix is basically what are the stages of life stages need to target. You have the adults, and that can be treated with adulticides. Pyrethroids, quite sufficient for that. And then you have the eggs. The eggs are key. And if we were to be able to use repellents, then the insect will not come to the leaf to lay the eggs, and that will cut this life cycle. Very simple, but very effective. On the other hand, later on, if some of these eggs hatched, then we could target them with larvicides, and there's a plenty of larvicides in the market. Anything which escapes this treatment can be treated with soil treatment. Many natural fungi like Metarhizium and Trichoderma can deal with the pupae and the last stage of the larvae in the soil, preventing it from emerging as an adult. So if you just keep moving around with all these different aspects, you will reduce the population. If you stick with only one larvae, one stage, you will not. The other problem you have is at some stage in the life cycle, there will be an interface between all stages. So in one day, you could find eggs, you could find larvae, you could find pupae, and you find adults at the same time. So what we're going to do, if you're going to use a larvicide, what good that will do to you? Because still you have eggs which are going to hatch, you have pupae is going to hatch, and adults going to lay some eggs. So by moving around between the stages, you will be able to control the damage of the Tuta absoluta to a large extent. This is a very interesting graph. This is a study being done by Dr. Marwan Abdelwali from Jordan, from the Agricultural Research Center. He compared the effect of 7 insecticides. Most of them are basically biologicals. And what the conclusion is 6 out of 7 effectively they act the same. So the level or the difference between their activity is marginal. In other words, you could use all of them, but not together, of course. You could move from one to the other, and that way you could make a very good rotation, very good control, all of them over 70 to 80% control, but without having to resort to any hard chemicals or mixtures. So effectively here, let's talk about it a bit more specifically. How we're going to make a decision to apply and what. There are 3 layered levels of intervention at 3 different stages of infestation. The first one, which is the most common one, that's when you could see there is insect in the traps, but there's no visible damage on the plant. That is the stage where anything from neem oil to sulfur can act as a repellent to prevent the insect from coming in contact with the plant and lay any eggs. But also, neem oil can destroy the eggs as well. BT, Bacillus thuringiensis kostaki, which is a biological insecticide, is soft, is safe, and is quite adequate to deal with the early stages of Tuta absoluta in early stages. If you could handle it at that stage, you will prevent the development into the second stage, which is basically the medium level, where you could see the damage on the leaves. Now here's a very important issue. There are 2 types of chambers you could see. One of them is caused by Tuta absoluta, and the other one used by another and more common leaf miner. There are 2 separate things. The first thing, farmers need to be taught how to differentiate between these 2. But the most important thing about this stage is the actual insect is inside the chamber, inside the leaf, and therefore it is not going to be in direct contact with the insecticide. That is very important in choosing the larvicide. you need a translaminate larvicide. You need a larvicide which can penetrate the leaf skin and get uh, to the insect. There are quite a few there, but you need to identify it. This final one, which is the advanced stage, when you could see a visible damage on the tomato. The tomato here is damaged, and when it's damaged, it's damaged. That's it. The only thing we could do at that stage is to remove and destroy the damaged fruit from the field. Keep them in large plastic bags and seal it in order to be destroyed throughout the following weeks and months before we allow the content of the bags to be put back to the soil as fertilizer. In the meantime, continue with the use of larvicides, but also if the population high and the capture in the traps very high, you could use adulticide to reduce the male population as well. Widening the mix. I think everybody understands what we're talking about here. If we use in this strategy a large number of insecticides and rotate between them, then obviously we're going to reduce the onset of resistance. It gives us a better chance of management, but also it allows us to use a smart and affordable range of insecticides. We have to remember the farmer has got a limited resources. So a wide mix can use cheaper and cost-effective solutions, but also expensive solutions at some stage of the cycle. We need to discourage mixing insecticides and making lethal blends and cocktails. And more importantly, the ministry need to consider relaxing registration procedures in order to ensure the availability of a wide range of products. We're not talking about a free-for-all, but we need to have a bit more fast-track situation. There are some unfortunate examples in which I could list whereby solutions has been prevented from entering the market for a year or two because of the decisions of the registration committee not to do anything about it, which meant a vast damage to the farmers. Finally, which is very important, and this is a pointed toward the private sector, is the strict rotation. Please, please, please make sure you don't advise your salespeople to oversell any particular formulation, because you're going to kill it. Advise to rotate the product with other insecticide, even if it was a competitor's insecticide. I know this has not been done before. It's not very easy for a salesman to promote somebody else's insecticide, but unfortunately or fortunately, in the case of Tuta, we need to think rotation, we need to think cooperation. Here there's one personal slide. From experience, we found that the biopesticides are just as good as synthetics. But they help to reduce the pesticide residue because they are biodegradable. The other thing is many of them, they have a multi-mode of action, which means the chance of resistance is less. So effectively, biopesticide is not contrary to the synthetics. It can be integrated with the synthetics in a balanced program. It could help extend the livelihood of the synthetics by placing it in the right place and creating the right balance between the biopesticide and between the synthetics. Finally, our friends, our natural friends, or the natural enemies. We need to start a serious attempt to identify local indigenous natural enemies and find ways of encouraging their increasing their numbers to help us in developing an overall strategy. In the meantime, Nisidicorus tenuis, which is indigenous to North Africa and part of the Middle East from Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, Palestine, and has been released successfully in Saudi Arabia in open tomato fields and provided a very good level of support. I wouldn't call it control, it's support to the overall management program. It's been released both in open field but also released inside the greenhouses. The interesting part of this strategy is you need a buffer, a buffer plant around the field which can sustain these insects when they are not in the field. This is the bottle gourd, which is a very popular, very well known plant and grows very easily. If it's been grown around the edges of the farm or between the greenhouses, then the Nisidicorus could live there, and that could provide an external support and barrier against invasion of Tuta absoluta. But also these insects, they will venture to move into the field and basically destroy the eggs. The thing is, the farmer going to use pesticide. Hopefully he's going to use biopesticide, which is quickly biodegrades. Then any Nisidicorus in the field might get killed, but at least after the biodegradation of the insecticide, more of them will move from the bottle gourd plants into the into the field, and that way we get a self-sustained, self-supported population of insects, which will basically their job is to help us reduce the level of risk and reduce the need for application of insecticides. Finally, winning the farmers. We need to educate and more educate. We need to communicate with them at all levels. We need to send them alerts, advise, and let's be a bit more creative. What about mobile phones? Most of them nowadays, they have mobile phones. Some of them, they have smartphones. Why don't we utilize that through a text messaging service to provide them with alerts, support, ideas, pictures, etc. Also to set up a hotline which people can reach and can share their problems and get some advice. And finally, you need to be on the ground. You need to be seen on the ground, sharing the burden with them and helping them to manage this particular problem. At Russell, we have been managing a website called tutaabsoluta.com over the last few years, and the job of that is to provide education, information, sharing platform. It's a gallery for people to share their pictures, their experiences, their questions, and if there's any news, all can be shared. It's there, open for anybody to make any contribution and available in different languages. So I urge you to follow it, and maybe there is something there for you to learn from. Finally, what's left to me is just to thank you, and my personal behalf and the behalf of Russell IPM for the opportunity given to us to talk to this distinguished meeting. Thank you.